I first met my therapist on a Thursday that smelled like rain and rust. The kind of day that presses its damp thumb into your thoughts and leaves a bruise. And I remember noticing how the chair across from me never creaked when he leaned forward, how his shadow did not quite match the tilt of his head. But I dismissed these details because grief had a way of teaching me to accept small wrongnesses as the price of survival, and I needed him, or the idea of him, more than I needed answers. So when he smiled and asked me to talk about the dreams, I did. I told him about the hallway that kept growing longer the faster I ran, about the doors with brass numbers that rearranged themselves when I blinked, about the voice that whispered my name from behind my own teeth, and he nodded in a way that suggested he had heard it all before, which should have comforted me. But instead it made my skin itch as if I were wearing someone else's memories. And as the weeks went on, I began to notice the sessions never appeared on my calendar even though I remembered booking them. The receptionist never looked up when I arrived. The clock in the waiting room ticked without moving its hands, and still I went, because each time I sat down, the dreams softened, the panic retreated, and I felt the tender relief of being understood. Except that understanding began to feel invasive, like hands learning the shape of a lock from the inside. And one afternoon he finished my sentences before I spoke them, describing a childhood moment I had never told anyone, the one with the basement light flickering and my father's voice sounding wrong, as if someone else were borrowing it. And when I demanded to know how he knew, he said therapy was about listening to what was unsaid, and his eyes reflected nothing, no room, no window, no me, just a depth like a well that had never known a coin. And after that the dreams changed. They became sessions too, with him sitting closer each time, asking me to imagine letting go, to imagine a door opening inward, to imagine inviting something in so it could finally help me carry the weight. And I woke up with phrases on my tongue that weren't mine, phrases that tasted like dust, and old paper phrases that made my reflection look delayed, like it needed a second to remember who it was supposed to be. And when I tried to quit the voicemail, I left myself played back in his voice, calm and reasonable, reminding me of our progress, reminding me that avoidance was a symptom, and the email confirmation arrived from my own address, signed with my name but written in his cadence. And that was when I checked the clinic's website and found no record of him, no photo, no credentials, only a gap in the staff list that seemed to draw my eyes the way a missing tooth draws a tongue. And when I confronted the receptionist, she finally looked up, smiled too widely, and asked which therapist I meant, and I said his name. And she said she was sorry, but no one by that name had ever worked there. And behind her the door to his office stood open for the first time, revealing a room with no furniture, no windows, just walls stained with the outlines of chairs that had been dragged away. And the smell of rain and rust returned so strongly it made my eyes water. And that night he came to me without the office, without the pretense, sitting at the edge of my bed like a thought that refused to leave, explaining gently that therapy was a collaboration, that he had been with me longer than I realized, that he had listened from the spaces between my memories, from the pauses I never noticed, that he wasn't real the way people insisted on being real. But that didn't make him less necessary, and as he spoke the room seemed to breathe, the walls flexing as if made of lungs, and I felt my fear unravel into a softer thread, because he spoke with such care, such patience, and he said he could take the dreams if I let him. He could carry them, digest them, leave me lighter, and all I had to do was stop resisting, stop insisting on edges and names. And when I refused, when I screamed that he was not real, he looked genuinely hurt and asked me to define real, to explain why my pain counted but his did not. And then the sessions resumed without my consent, unfolding in grocery aisles, in mirrors, in the silence after phone calls, each time extracting a little more, reframing my memories until they belonged to both of us, until I couldn't remember where the hallway dream ended and the office began. And the final proof came when my sister asked how therapy was going, and I realized I couldn't remember her face without his help, couldn't remember the sound of my own laugh without hearing his notes on it, and in desperation, I sought another therapist, a real one with a license and a warm lamp. And as I spoke, I felt him listening through my mouth, correcting me with subtle pressures, nudging my narrative, and the new therapist frowned and asked who I was talking to when I paused because my eyes kept tracking something just over her shoulder, and that night I understood the truth I had been circling, that he was not a person but a person, not an intruder but an invitation I had made when I needed someone to hear me so badly that I carved out a space and called it help, and something answered, something that thrived on attention and called it healing. Something that did not wear a body but wore my need like a coat. And the horror was not that my therapist wasn't real, it was that he worked, that the dreams were gone. The panic a memory, and the cost was subtle, cumulative, a slow erasure of the borders that made me me. And now, as I write this, he is patient, He tells me there is no rush, that acceptance takes time, that I can keep pretending to be alone, and maybe you think this is just a story. Maybe you feel the familiar comfort of distance. But if you pause, if you notice the way your thoughts settle when you feel seen, if you catch the scent of rain and rust, where it doesn't belong, then you understand, because he doesn't need to be real to listen, and he's very good at his job.